Chapter 2. Tempo Monks.
Now, Tangerine, it has come to my attention that you have mastered the 3 universal truths, yes?
Yes, I have, but I feel that there must be more.
There is not. Shall I dismiss you?
No, my apologies.
What are they?
Rhythm, soul, and groove.
Good.
Beginning to glare at Tangerine while she is kneed before him, the lead monk begins to pace side to side, facing towards her, left foot first to the left, right foot second to the left, right foot third to the right, left foot fourth to the right.
Tell me what I have just done.
A 2-step.
Good. And what does it represent here at the temple?
The 4 noble beats of life.
Very good. You have studied and practiced our ways. You are aware that if you pass this final task, you will become the first female to join our covenant?
Yes, sir, I am aware.
Have you done your 8-fold prayer this morning throughout the garden with the elders yet?
No, not yet.
Well then, why don't you go on and do so? I will find you with your final task.
Yes, and thank you.
Leave.
Tangerine comes to her feet and gives the podium one last look before turning. The lead monk was gone. However, a white cloak was placed behind her as she turned.
Finally,
she thought, as she received her covenant garments. The seal printed was 2 rods crossed, much like the actual seal that the lead monk wore. All who have it can access secret passageways. She smiled and made her way out towards the sky-drenched pillars of stone. 3 on either side led her straight to the exit door of steel and wood. Eyes shaded before walking out into the blinding light, the opening courtyard of brick and marble. The chapel towered over the rest of its components, a massive temple. She walked past the eating quarters while glimpsing over the orchard of apples, that is, straight into the many grass mounds with trees perfectly shaped, no branches, no leaves. Only the stump, a perfect cylinder of bark. There the elder monks who have mastered the metronome use the power of tempo to shape the flat grass into many mounds, while their mastered energy sculpts the trees. Tangerine had arrived at the garden of the 8-fold prayer, where the elders walked in slow motion performing. She began to join. Arms stretched out in front of her gripping the air, it pulls the rest of her forward. Her palms and fingers stretched flat parallel to the ground. Both now tilt to the left, then softly to the right, then both hands cupped inward so that her wrist reaches out, while her fingertips point at her stomach. The cupped hands represents the energy she captured. It is now pulled up above her head, just before the fingertips remain towards her and wrist reaching out until her shoulder length, where her hands become flat facing the sky. Breathing in. Now breathing out as her hands fall straight back down to her sides to continue the prayer. The folding of her hands happen 8 times, thus the 8-fold prayer. If done correctly, each additional time the cupped hand vibrates, for instance, on the 3rd, there will be 3 distinctive vibrations before hands are lifted above her head and breathes out. 1 vibe, 2 vibe, and 3 vibe, all until the 7th, where the 8th is the most powerful and moves the one praying forward before beginning the process again. That energy builds up and vibrating control is what sculpts the trees, whereas the placement in which the energy was built upon, the grass elevates. Tangerine does the prayer properly. When she is done, the flat grass she was standing on is now a mini grass mound, and the tree that was in the path of her 8-fold prayer has been sculpted to perfection. While Tangerine was performing this prayer to the metronome practice, She began to notice that she was the only one out of unison. Before she knew it, she was surrounded by all the elders with their final eightfold prayer energy aimed right at her with no visible gap. She began to think she was about to be forced within a cipher, but this was not the case. The gust of energy simultaneously bottlenecked Tangerine's airspace, however, caused no harm towards her. Instead, the ground began to rise, not at all like the mini grass mounds. A 20-foot diameter platform of lawn rushed above the average man's shoulder height. Tangerine was lifted along with it, stood in the center, startled and shaken. She began to wonder what's going on.
Is this the stage for my final task?
Ascending on top of a cloud, the lead monk landed on the platform with a vibrant, glowing stone.
Yes, Tangerine, you must perform this final task. Only then will you become part of the covenant. Only then will you become a tempo monk.
What must I do?
Take this seed, flow it into the ground, and grow a tree.
I've never seen anyone do such a thing. What is the technique?
Not all things require text.
So, then what?
Forget about guidance and harness everything we have taught you.
Tangerine stared at the vibrant glowing seed, then tilted up her head and saw that the lead monk was gone. Looking all around the residence of the temple, seeing trees unbranched, leafless, and all mounted straight up, knowing deep down that these structures were not her, she began to fluctuate her own senses to pure, obscure thought. She began to embody her emotions, a sloping regret, but of what? Only she knew. Taking in a deep breath before entering the next 30 seconds, her head now clear with a relaxed mind that seemed to almost levitate. Bringing it down with shoulders arching up, then down with elbows arching up, then down once more with wrists curving toward the center of her being. Grasping the seed in both hands, the seed grew brighter. In its spearing refraction out from the crevasses between her fingers, it blinded the inspecting elders enough to throw their hands up in a shielding manner. For a moment, all was white. Tangerine bent her knees until her back was straight and perpendicular to the ground, her knees resting on one another. Now in a stance, arching her upper body while her waist down remained still, she reached down with both arms and hands while pushing the seed into the ground. The light was gone. She began to think,
what next? What now?
The lead monk watching in the distance, expecting her to perform the eightfold prayer or any of the other forms she has been taught or has studied for the last 2,000 years. Instead, she began to do something she has never been taught within these walls. Tangerine lifted her hands off the ground slowly, but rather than standing straight up in mid-level of her height, she began to curve her body to the left. Her arms and hands followed in curvature, then to the right, then left, snaking herself up and down, arms crossing each other with the intention of curving them in a circular motion. She was lost in her movement, captured by a cylinder net made by her body. When she turned around, then she saw it. A 6-foot diameter redwood tree, thick and permanent, waved out of the ground, mimicking her every move. The tree was 10 times bigger than any tree in the area and was the only tree that curved and spiraled, with forming branches that crossed each other just as her arms had done. Tangerine thought she was doing what she was meant to do. However, the lead monk was furious and was making his way towards her to end it. Confident in her every movement, curves with precision and with her feelings attached, changed techniques into vivid poetry, poetry into motion. It became so powerful that the energy on the tips of the branches being created by her actually formed into tangible reality, visible energy. The ground shook. The lead monk jumped on his cloud and kept his distance as the nearby mountain began to cave in. A creature emerged out of the mountain and rushed to feed upon the energetic tips of Tangerine's creation. A massive crawling creature, equal to the size of tree branches while bigger than the average man. It too began to glow a vibrant pinkish red, feeding on the white-blue scar edges of the branches growing. Stop! The lead monk was not pleased by her ascending an ancient creature known as the Quebec. It meant that her heart was pure and was not worthy of the advanced techniques of the coven. I said stop! Stop! Tangerine stood still. However, filled with confidence and poise, unfortunately, she was denied by the lead monk, and what she had felt soon will fade. She was given another task to fulfill her oath to the covenant. She did not hesitate to follow direction, but she secretly grew weary of the monk's motives. Just as the tree she created, curved with no assurances, slumped in the worriment, and hunched over, questioning what had she done wrong, she grew suspicious of the covenant. After the creature fled in fear of the elders, was it worth coming here? Are the stories of being imprisoned for not respecting their ways true? Or worse, death? Secretive in their ways, all she ever wanted was to be a temple monk.